Welcome to Power Your Story.
Power Your Story podcast is produced by students at After School Matters with production support from the Creative and Poster Studios.
Enjoy the show.
Hey, it's Power Your Story Program Director Andrea Klunder, and we are continuing our series of episodes related to Mental Health Awareness Month. In this episode, we are sharing a different spin on mental health with heavy metal fan, musician, and artist Justin Bowling. This interview was hosted by Carlos, Essence, Leslie, and ChuYing, and produced by Aldo. If you're struggling with mental health, anxiety, or depression, please know that you are not alone. Reach out to someone at your school, your medical provider, or someone you trust to help you find support. To make it easier, we've included links to both some national and local Chicago resources in the show notes, in the episode description in your app, and at poweryourstorypodcast.com. Enjoy the interview.
Hi, welcome to Power Your Story podcast. My name is Carlos. I'm here with Essence, Leslie, and Chu. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, heavy metal music, with Justin Bowling. Justin, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic. I'm excited to be here.
Where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota.
How are you connected to the heavy metal scene?
I am an illustrator for a lot of heavy metal bands locally here to Minneapolis and some overseas as well in the UK. I do a lot of band logos. So what you can see on my shirt, listeners won't be able to see it, but you all can there. And then I also do some album artwork and internal pages of albums artwork as well.
Why do you do artwork for heavy metal bands?
I have loved doing art since I was very young, and I got a degree in art, and I actually did comics for a long time, but I've also been a huge metal fan since about 2014 when I got into it. And once we moved into Minneapolis, we started making a lot of connections with local bands. And it just sort of all fell together because they're like, oh, you're an artist, you could do this. And so I just started doing a few things for a few friends, and then just through social networking was able to get into doing it more seriously.
What is your process for creating designs?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I'm working with someone, I generally ask them to give me some either images that they're fond of or things they find on, say, Google or something like that to get an idea of what they're looking for. And then I'll do a really rough sketch, usually a handful of 5 or 6 rough sketches of different ideas to see which one looks along the lines of what they're wanting. And then I just go from there. But my process is a little more loose than a lot of other artists, and I just jump in from the start.
Now I'll pass the mic to Essence.
Hi, Justin. My questions: what instrument do you play, and how long have you been in music?
I have been a musician since I was about 14, so that's roughly 21 years. I play guitar, bass, a little bit of piano, but yeah, primarily guitar. That's my main instrument, and I sing.
How many songs do you play or listen to all the days?
Oh, I listen to a lot. I actually have here in my studio, I've got a record player, a CD player, and a tape player. At work, I have a tape deck and also a CD player. I, of course, have my headphones. I listen to music all day, every day. I kind of always need to have something going on in the background to help me focus. My colleagues at my job are getting introduced to more metal as that time goes on. But I listen to it a lot.
How much you play?
Yeah, I used to play a lot. I actually played music for a living back when we lived in Missouri. It was mostly just doing cover songs and things like that to pay for rent while I was going through college. I stopped playing for a while as I started focusing more on art, because there's only so much time in the day to do one thing. But recently I've picked up playing a lot more.
What advice you get something who is just learn how to play an instrument?
I would give someone the same advice as I would for art as well, which is there's a lot whenever you're getting into learning an instrument or music or getting into art. There's a lot of professional advice out there, but honestly, just start doing something you enjoy doing. You have to enjoy it before you can start really getting into the specifics about it. So for music, I would recommend learn some songs you like and just do that until you get comfortable with it. And then as that goes on, you can start picking up more of the specifics on things.
Why is heavy metal your favorite songs to play or listen to?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I got into heavy metal later in life, like I said, about 2014 when I was in my 20s. I really enjoy it, and specifically, I like a lot of black metal. And the reason I enjoy that is there's a lot more, it's more about the emotion behind the music than it is so much about the lyrics and what the person's saying. It's more about what they're feeling. And that really connected with me. And it's also something I found that can help calm me. If I'm upset about something, it's a very calming presence. There's lots of heavy metal music out there. There's stuff that's just for fun. There's stuff that's more serious. But for me, I really have that emotional response and connection to it.
Now I'm passing to Leslie.
Hi, Justin. A lot of people don't really like to listen to heavy metal music. How can we learn to appreciate it, even if it's not something we're into?
I would say, honestly, and this is how I got into it, I didn't like heavy metal music for a long time. I didn't really like the really harsh vocals, like the growls that a lot of people do. And it was a slow process for me where it was a bit of an acquired taste to get into it. And I would say anybody who's maybe wanting to try it out, find bands that are not as extreme, meaning not like black metal or death metal, but something like Ronnie James Dio or Black Sabbath, some of the more classic bands that are a little more blues oriented and not so much metal oriented, if it's a world you want to try to get into, and then allow yourself to just listen to what you like, because there's a lot of different music out there, and there is probably something in the metal world for everybody, because it's not just one sound or one type. There is a lot of different music that someone can find.
You mentioned that metal has helped you through some dark times and mental health challenges. Can you say more about that?
Absolutely. About the time I got into metal, I was going through a rough time, something a lot of us experience at times. And for me personally, a lot of that was I never liked to feel angry or show anger in any way. I always try to be a very positive person, and I still am. But when I discovered metal, I was really struggling with that back and forth of having these feelings that I didn't want to show. And when I discovered metal, I all of a sudden discovered a lot of people who were sharing those same feelings I were having and were very comfortable being very vocal about their struggles, and especially dealing with negative emotions like anger and things like that. And so it really connected with me to help me feel like I wasn't alone in what I was feeling. And I think that's a really important part of both art and metal, is that in a way it's a language without having to speak, of being able to convey emotions that a lot of us have trouble dealing with. And so that can really help us find our full selves, find every part of our being that is more than just trying to be happy or just trying to be other things, because all of those emotions exist. And I think it's important for us to be able to understand that and not be afraid of ourselves.
Why is mental health important?
Mental health is very important because it is something that I think everybody on some level struggles with at some point. And by mental health, maybe we feel blocked if we're having a feeling that we don't understand or a feeling that we're trying to hide from, going back to what I was saying about the music. And it's important for us to be able to let ourselves be who we are, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, but allow ourselves to understand ourselves. Because sometimes a lot of people are different in a lot of ways, and sometimes trying to hide something blocks a part of ourselves, and so that can really hurt us on the inside. And the more that is stuck inside of us, the more it hurts our emotions and our feelings. So I feel like We're luckily living in a world where it's becoming much more appropriate and acceptable to talk about how we feel and who we are. And that's a very positive change that's been happening. And I do think it's important that mental health is something we regularly talk about, just so people don't feel like they're alone.
How else can you improve mental health?
Firstly, the easiest way is talk to your friends. If you're having a hard time, talk to someone who you trust, who you're close to, who you can be honest with. And just getting whatever's on your mind out there helps tremendously. Just saying it. And it sounds silly sometimes that maybe just saying something can change everything, but it's true. Just getting it outside of your head and out in front of you gets it out of your body. And then, of course, if you're struggling with more intense things, therapy is one therapy no matter your age. You can be really young, you could be 50 years old, you can be 80 years old. Therapy is a wonderful thing and a tool to use.
What is your top priority when it comes to mental health?
What I was just saying, talking, getting it out of your head is a big part. And very specifically being nice to yourself, not beating yourself up over things that sometimes aren't in your control or just things you're struggling with. Everybody has it, and talking about it is the best thing you can do to start. When
do you think outside help is needed?
I will disclose that my wife is a mental health practitioner. So this is not necessarily original thoughts. This is her having helped me with a lot of things. But I would say outside help is needed if you are experiencing something for a long time. If it's not just you're having a bad day and then you're okay the next day, if it's something that you're dealing with over a long period of time, or it's repeated and it keeps coming back and it keeps building up. And also if you are talking to your friends and maybe that helps, but it's not giving you everything you need to be able to figure out what's going on, that would be the best time. And also I do want to say on that, there's never a bad time to go to therapy. You don't have to be in a bad place per se to go to therapy. You actually can get more help and work done if you go when things aren't really bad. That's when you can really help yourself the most.
Now I'll pass the mic to Chu.
What do you like to draw?
Oh, I like to draw lots of things. I actually did comic books for a long time before I started doing metal artwork. So that kind of is everything. People, buildings. I love drawing big city type buildings. But now I've gotten more into, I really like logo artwork, and it looks kind of drippy and webby. It's hard to explain without showing it, but I like that very loose drawing for logos. But logos, I like to draw logos a lot.
What is your favorite color?
My favorite color? This is probably obvious, but I like black a lot.
Oh, my favorite color was blue.
Also a good choice.
Oh, I think now pass to color.
Do you have any other hobbies besides music and art?
I do. I would say art and music started as my first hobbies and then became something I started doing more professionally. And now I really love playing Magic the Gathering. That's a fun thing to do with friends. And then also role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons or Vampire the Masquerade. I like those in-person games a lot. So that's been my main hobby as of late.
Who are some of your favorite underrated bands of all time?
Oh, yeah, this is obviously, you ask anybody who's a music lover what their favorite underrated bands are, and they can go on for hours. Mine, just a couple. There's a band called Shape of Despair, another one called Austere, and also Woods of Desolation. Those are probably my three favorite bands that not a lot of people have heard of. And then also, there's two record labels I go to a lot to find new music. One is Folkvanger Records, which has a lot of really amazing underground black metal that's coming out. A lot of first-time bands are coming out on that label. And then Bindrune Recordings does a lot of mid-level, more well-known bands, but still underground. But both of those labels have a lot of amazing music.
What are some local Minnesota bands you recommend?
Oh, there are a lot of really amazing Minnesota metal bands. Just real quick on that, Minnesota has a large Scandinavian population that has come over back, I think in the 1800s, or maybe, I don't know my history that well, but so there's a lot of metal that's very similar to the metal that comes out of Finland and Norway and places like that. So some local ones that are absolutely incredible that you should check out are Morke, Morke. Morke is a local musician, and they are absolutely incredible. Their latest album called We Are the River, and it's a very emotional piece, but also really beautiful. Another band that is fantastic is Nephrons. That is Jory, who is also the sole musician behind that. He now lives in Washington State, but did a lot of music here in Minnesota. His music is absolutely amazing as well. And lastly, I pronounce this wrong, but Tvær, Tvaer, is another group of friends of mine, a little harsher black metal, but really incredible musicians.
What's the first heavy metal band discovered?
Yeah, that's a fun one too. So I actually, to be completely honest, there was a show on Cartoon Network on the Adult Swim timeline called Metalocalypse. And it was a very funny show about a very famous metal band and how ridiculous their lives were. But the creator behind that, who's Brendan Small, also wrote all of the music and played all of the parts to the albums that accompanied that. And so, like I said earlier, I was not a huge fan of growling vocals, but I really enjoyed this music and I liked how funny it was. So I started listening to it a lot more. And the more I listened to it, the more I got used to the very harsh sort of death metal vocals. And so it really was the band Death Clock from the show Metalocalypse that got me really into heavy metal.
Is there anything else you'd like to share today?
Yeah. So just real quick, I can tell you where you can find some of my work. On Facebook, I have a art page called Vestaban Comics, and I'll spell that. It's Vesteban Comics. And then the same with Instagram, Vestaban Comics, at Vestaban Comics is my Instagram. I post a lot more about metal and also my own work on my Instagram. And the website will one of these days be back up and running when I have time to do it. I am very proud of you all for sticking with this and doing this. It's a lot of work to do something creative, and doing a podcast is absolutely creative. You all are really good at it, so definitely keep going. Even as you move on through life, keep doing something along this vein. It is very much worthwhile.
Okay. Thank you, Justin, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you all. It has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you asking me to do this.
Power Your Story podcast is produced by students at After School Matters with production support from the Creative and Poster Studios.
Find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Power Your Story Podcast.
Got a question or suggestion for our show? Contact us at poweryourstorypodcast.com. Thank you for listening and have a great day.